Welcome Year 10s to this video. In it, we're going to start our topic of linear relations, which is going to take us through for a few more weeks. What you need to make sure you've got in front of you is this booklet of notes, and you also need to have your calculator in front of you as well, because we are going to be using it a fair bit. In this first lesson, you're going to discover a really neat function that your calculator has in regards to solving equations. Now, before we do get to solving, just a quick review of algebra. Obviously, it's used extensively at this level of mathematics. It's a range of letters and symbols that are used to form equations or expressions, and we use algebra to solve problems. So those letters that we use, we call them pronumerals, or I might use this term variable sometimes as well, because all it means is that if there's a number that we don't know, or it could be a set of numbers that we don't know, or a set of numbers that are being represented by that letter. So they need to be defined in a way, so we use a letter as just a representation of those numbers. So for example, with this one, we've got A being apple, so 2 apples, and B being bananas, so 3 bananas, or it might be a bag of apples or a bag of bananas. So it could represent many different things, but this you'll be familiar with. You would have seen it for a number of years now. Just a couple of things. When we multiply with algebra, we tend to leave the multiplication symbol out. So 5 times A, you should be writing that as 5A. We also write the number, what we call the coefficient, first. So we will not be writing A5, we'll be writing 5A. Instead of using the division symbol, we always write, when we're doing algebra, we write these as a fraction. So we would write n over 7, not n divided by 7. Of course, they mean the same thing. However, that's just something we should be getting used to by now. Just one little thing, pronumerals, we tend to write them in alphabetical order. I'm not really going to be too fussed about that one, but that's just for your knowledge. If the term doesn't have a number in front, it actually does have a number. It's just almost like an invisible number 1. So if we see the pronumeral T, it's referring to one group of T or one lot of T. Now, some of the key things, we might refer to a term. A term is a combination of the letters, so the pronumerals, and the numbers, the coefficients. And you also might see some operations. So here 5x obviously means 5 times x, but 5x itself is a term. We can have division in there as well. So 2a on 3 means 2a divided by 3. So that's also a term. Even a number on its own is a term. We call it the constant term. Coefficient, that's the numbers. So the numbers that are sitting in front of your pronumeral. An expression is just it's almost like a sentence of numbers, so a combination of letters, numbers, and the symbols, the mathematical operations. We use the word equation when you see an expression with an equal symbol in it. So if you see here, I've got 5x plus 1 equals 11, or 2a plus 5 on 3 is equal to 5. There are equations. Even this one, x equals 5. Like terms are terms where we have the same pronumeral. So in this example, it's x, but we've also got that raised to the same power. So you'll see both of these, the ones circled, are both x squared. Now that's important because we can collect like terms together, which you've been doing since about year 7 or 8. So that was just a reminder for you if I refer to like terms. You're looking for identical terms. Substitution, that's where we replace a pronumeral with a particular value. So with this first one, we've got y equals 5a plus 2b. So if a was 2, I would replace the a with a 2, so that means 5 times 2. And if b is 3, that means 2 times 3. So then I've got 10 plus 6, and that is 16. So we will see some substitution today. I'm going to show you how you can do it on your calculator though. Finally, rearranging. We'll come back to rearranging in a later lesson. We might need to do that when we graph. It basically means you're going to use the rules of algebra, so either adding, subtracting, multiplying or dividing to both sides of the equation, and that is to make something what we call the subject of the equation. So if you had something like this, 2y plus x equals 6, I could rearrange that So I could subtract 2y from both sides, and that would leave me with x on one side, and that would make x the subject of the equation. So what we want to do is look at the key skills of algebra, but also how we use our calculator for these key skills. So the first one is substituting values. So what I'm going to do in a second is show you this particular example, but I'll show you step by step on the calculator, and then you'll be able to have a go yourself with some of the examples underneath. So what we're actually going to do is I'll go to this screen here. So we want our calculator screen, and you'll notice in that example that we had A and we had B. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the calculator to store a value for A. So you're going to type in A, so down here on the keypad, and now we're going to get it, there's just a button that we need to press, and if you have a look over here next to the book, so find that book button, which is underneath delete. Just to the left of that, you'll see there's a funny looking button. It's got some, it's hard to see on my screen actually, but it's got some little, I guess like a little square with some lines around it. I want you to press Control and then that button. So it actually will give us what's in the blue above. So you'll see that it's a colon with an equal sign. Now the reason we're going to do that is we're going to tell the calculator to store the number 12 for A. So now if I was to type in A, you see it comes up in bold, it tells me that A is equal to 12. So essentially, like I said, I use the word storing it. Now, in this particular problem we're looking at, we've also got B. So I'm going to click on B now. I'm going to do the same thing, Control, and then this button that's next to the book. And I'm going to store B as -5. So I've got A is 12, B is -5. Now, all I want to do is I want to find C. So if you go back to our example, it says C is square root of A squared plus B squared. So all I have to do now is type, well, I can do this, I can type C equals if I want. And then I will do the square root. So the square root is, if you look next to the 4, there's an x squared button, but we have to press Control to get the opposite of that, the square root. And then we can type A, you'll see it comes up in bold. Then I'll square that, so the squared button is next to the 4, plus B, and then squared as well, and then press Enter. And you'll see what it does is it solves or evaluates that equation there with those values that we gave for A and for B. So we got C is equal to 13. And you'll see that's what we've got on the screen here. So we can do the same thing, but with these examples here. Now, I'll just, I guess, let you know that sometimes it's actually easier just to substitute in. So, for example, with this one, I want x to be 5. So if I just make that a 5, y is 2 times 5 plus 5. So that's going to give me 15. So I don't really need to use my calculator for that. Same with this one. I can just substitute the x value for x and the y value over here. And that will give me, oh, it's got a y there. I think that's a typo. It should just be, might just cross that out. So 4x plus y on 2. The reason is I don't really want 2 y's here. That's why I changed it. Y is 4 times 5 and then plus 6 divided by 2. So that's an option for you. You don't have to use the calculator. If I do it with the calculator, I'll just delete this. I've got x, so I'll just type in x, store, I want number 5, enter, and y, I will store number, what was it, 6, 5 and 6, like that. And then all I have to do is I can type 4x, or 4 times x, and then plus, and I'll do y on 2. There we go. And you'll see we get 23, which I also would have got, if I just go back to my other one, if I just did the 20 plus 6 on 2, which is 3. Now, last one, you'll see that we're actually going to use x is 5 again and y is 6 again, and I've already stored them. So what I'll do now is I'll I'll store this value of 4 for Z. I'll just delete that one, I don't need it. Z is 4, so press enter. And this one was 3 times x times y. 3 times x times y plus z squared. Z squared. Like so, and I get 106 for that one. So if you did it the other way, it would have been 3 times 5 times 6 plus 4 squared. So that will give us 90 there, and this is 16. So 90 and 16, 106. But it's up to you, really. You can do either method, provided you are substituting accurately. Your calculator will give you the exact same result. Okay, so that's substituting, which we do a little bit in this topic. What we do a lot of, though, is solving linear equations. Now, in terms of what you'll need to be able to do, yes, some basic equations. We would expect you to be able to solve some basic ones by hand, definitely. And you do have your calculator with you, but what we could say to you is just demonstrate the steps of solving these particular equations. So please don't think that you'll solely use your calculator. Yes, we will use it a lot, but there is an expectation that you'll do a little bit of solving by hand. So nothing really more difficult than what's on this page. So I'm going to just remind you of how we solve. We obviously do the same operation to both sides, and we want to do the inverse operation. So I'll talk you through that as we get through these examples. If you need to, you'll need to sometimes collect like terms. I think there's one example here where we'll do that. And expanding brackets. If necessary, expand those brackets as well before you solve. So the first one, I've got a plus 27 equals 71. I need to know what a is. So my first step will be to have a look what's happening here. 27 is being added, and I'll take away 27 from both sides. So in terms of my workings, I'll just show that the answer, A, will be 71, take away 27, since I took away the 27 from the left-hand side. That will leave me with 44. This one here, we've got division happening because it's D divided by 16. So the opposite of division is multiplication. So I need to multiply both sides by 16. That will lead it to be cancelled out from this left-hand side. So in my workings, all I'll write is that D is 4 times 16. And that's 64. So you'll notice these ones we can do in just one step, those two there. There was only one thing that we did. We subtracted with this one, we multiplied with that one. Two-step equations just means there is going to be that extra step. So we just want to break it down one at a time. We'll start with this one on the left. This is most like the equations we're going to be coming across. Sometimes we might come across them like this, but because we're working with linear equations, they should be fairly straightforward. So a lot of the time, just a two-step one. First of all, I've got 5y, but then it's 6 is being subtracted. Since I'm going backwards, I deal with this part first. So it's being subtracted, so I'm going to add it to both sides. That will leave me with 5y is 7 plus 6. So you can just put 13. And then my next step, here the y is being multiplied by 5, so I'm going to divide both sides by 5. That, of course, cancels it out because 5 divided by 5 is 1. And I'm left with this answer, 13 over 5. You can leave it like that. You don't need to change it to a mixed number. Just if it is a fraction, just simplify that fraction. You can simplify just by typing it into your calculator and pressing enter, and it will simplify. That is obviously already simplified since we've got prime numbers top and bottom. Okay, so the next one, we've got 4x is being divided by 9. So that division by 9, I'll deal with that first. And I'll just fix that 9. I deal with that by multiplying both sides by 9. That will cancel it out from here. So 4x is equal to 5 times 9, which is 45. Next step, this is being multiplied by 4, so I divide both sides by 4. I'm left with 45 on 4. Again, if you can simplify it, you will, but that one there will stay as is. Finally, you might come across equations where we've got a pronumeral on both sides of the equation. So I've got one here and I've got one here. And this is where our like terms are important. So I mentioned them earlier. We're going to see that happen here. So I like to deal with my pronumerals first. So what I'm going to do is I want all my h's on one side. I'm going to take away this 2h from this side. There is a reason I did that, and that's so that my h will stay positive. I could have subtracted 5h from both sides if I wanted to, but then I would have ended up with a negative here. So I just do my best to avoid that where I can. So on this side, I've got 5h plus 13 take away 2h. So 5h take away 2h, 5 take 2, will leave me with 3 groups of h. And then I've got the plus 13, and that's equal to negative 2. Don't forget the negative. It's negative 2 because the 2h is gone, so 2h take away 2h is now 0, but then 0 take away 2 will give me negative 2. So just be careful of any negatives that might get left behind. My next step, now I've got my h's together, they're collected, now I'll deal with this 13. I want to take away that 13 from both sides since it's being added here. So negative 2 take away 13 gives me negative 15. And finally, I'm going to divide both sides by 3 so that I can cancel that out. And my final answer. Usually I'd put it underneath, but I've just run out of space. So negative 15 on 3 is negative 5. So there's just a really quick recap of how to solve by hand. But remember, we're only going to be solving these sorts of equations by hand. All others, we're going to be making use of our calculator. And so that's the part that I want to finish off with. I want to show you how we solve on the calculator, which is very exciting. And I also want to show you just a couple of worded questions to finish it off. Okay, so using the CAS calculator to solve, your go-to is this set of steps right here, menu 3, 1. I'm going to go to the calculator now. I'm just going to delete this because we don't need it. And I want you to press menu 3, 1 for me. And what you're going to see come up is this, it'll say solve, and then you'll see brackets. Your cursor will be inside those brackets. To solve an equation, what you do is you type the equation in, so the entire thing, the equal sign, everything, both sides of it. So with the example that's shown on your page, it's got 5y take away 6 equals 79. So your equals is, if you have a look at your calculator where control is, just underneath that, that's how you get the equals symbol come up. So 5y take away 6 equals 79, and then we're going to put comma y because that's what we want it to solve for, and then we'll press enter. And as you can see, the calculator has done all of the algebra for us, and it's told us that y is 17. I'll do another example so you can see. We press menu, number 3, then number 1. And this one here is 4x over 9. So I'll press control and then the division symbol to get a fraction come up. I'll type in 4x, and then on the bottom I had 9. I'll move the cursor to the side now so I can put my equals, and that's equal to 5. Now, you always have to put a comma and then what you are solving for. So this one I'm solving for x. I want to know what x is, so I put comma x, and I press enter. And as you can see, we got 45 on 4. Now, if you want to, you can change your 45 on 4. It does show you in your notes there. If you press menu and then number 2 for number, and then if you go down to number 7, fraction tools, and then proper fraction, like so, proper fraction. For 45 on 4, which was our answer. Like I said, you don't really need to do this, but if you're interested, your calculator will do it. That's 11 1/4. So something, I guess, cool that your calculator also does for you. Okay, so on your page, there are 2 that you can solve by hand. So it would be great if you would pause here and have a go at solving those 2 examples. I'll just point them out to you. They are under here. So these 2. Pause here, have a go, and then I will continue and I'll do them on the calculator and you can compare your result to mine. So I'm just going to type it in as is. I've pressed menu 3-1 for solve to come up, and this one's got brackets in it. So just note that your brackets are down here next to the 0. Find your 0 and go to the left, and there's your your brackets, not curly brackets. So just your standard brackets. So x plus 1, and then we close the bracket. Take away 4, and then bracket x take away 2. Close the bracket, equals 0, and we put a comma x. And we press enter. Okay, so I like to just check I've typed it in correctly. So I've got 6 times x plus 1, take away 4 times x take 2 equals 0, comma x, and then I've got x is -7. Now, just a note, you'll notice that my x is coming up bold. Yours may not be doing that, and that's because I've got something saved for x. So if I say delete, if I go menu actions, delete variable, I'll just show you the difference and type in x, it'll just clear it for me. But that shouldn't change the result that you get, as you can see. So I've got x is -7. And I don't need to show any workings because I used my calculator. I just put my answer. I'll just delete this one. And we'll do it again, menu 3-1. As you can see, it's pretty easy to solve with the calculator, provided you can remember menu 3-1, and you can type your equation in accurately. You'll be able to solve anything. So 7 by 5 take x equals 3 by x plus 1, take 10, and we put our comma x because that's what we're solving for. As you can see, we've got 21/5. You can leave it like that. Change it to a mixed number if you want, but it's not absolutely necessary because that number is fine. We're going to be able to have another go just with some worded ones. Worded ones are probably the most challenging because you do actually have to write the equation with these ones. So I've just got a couple to show you and then we'll finish off. So the sum of two consecutive numbers. What are the two numbers? So the sum is going to come to 33. So what I know is two things added together gives me 33. Now the problem is I need to use some letters for these two numbers. So the first one I usually go with is x. Now consecutive means numbers that are side by side, one after another on the number line. So consecutive numbers, if I have one on a number line, this one's x. The very next one is actually going to be one greater. It's going to be called x plus 1. So you might have solved some problems like this in the past, but if you haven't, this is how I would approach it. Reason is we don't want to put x plus y equals 33 because the calculator can only solve for you if you have one variable, so one pronumeral that's unknown. Now you might say, but hang on, you've got two pronumerals here. I do, but they're the same pronumeral, so they can be collected. So that's actually the same as 2x plus 1, and that means that my calculator will be able to solve that. Now, you don't even need to collect the like terms because I can solve straight from here. I can go menu 3-1, x plus 1 equals 33, and then I put my comma x, and then I press enter. Now, I'm not sure whether I said where the comma was before. If you're wondering, it's right down the bottom here underneath the pi button. There's a comma. So x is equal to 16. X is equal to 16. And then if that's one of the numbers, we want the two numbers. So the two numbers are, remember they're consecutive, so one after the other. The two numbers are 16 and 17. And the beauty is you can check that works. So 16 plus 17 gives us 33. So I'm confident that that's the right answer. With the next one, we're given information about the perimeter of a rectangle. We know that its perimeter is 78 and we know its width as well, and we're asked to find its length. So to start with, you might want to consider how to find the perimeter of a rectangle. So I'll write this because I know that the perimeter is there's the length and there's the width. 2 times the length, because they're the same, and 2 times the width, because these two are the same, if I want the distance all the way around. So I write myself a little formula first. Perimeter is 2L plus 2W. The perimeter itself is 78, so that's this bit, 78. And the width was the other bit I was told, which is 10, so W is 10. So 2L plus 2 times 10. Okay, now, I often write it like this, but you don't have to. That's just habit. You can write it as just 2 times 10 if you want, like that. All right, so from there, I will go and solve that, and I'll find out what L is, what the length is. So menu 3.1, I'll go 78 equals 2 times L, so I'll just type the letter L, plus 2 times 10, and then comma, L this time, not X, because I actually called it L in the equation. And there it is, L is 29. If you accidentally do X, this is what happens. It gives you basically another equation. So if this happens, you want to be careful. You want to go, okay, did I put the right letter at the end for what I was solving for? So that's just a little bit of a heads up, some troubleshooting for you. So L was 29. So again, if you want to, you could check that that works by doing 29 plus 29 plus 10 plus 10 and checking that that gives you 78, which it will. Finally, something like this, we've got a gardener charging $20 per visit. So when they come to your house, you have to pay them $20. And then for every hour that this gardener's working, she's going to charge you $25. So what will a 4-hour job cost? Well, first of all, we consider we're paying her $20. And then we're paying $25 for every hour. And so we're going to multiply that by how many hours we've got. So 20 plus 25 times 4. Well, 25 by 4 will give us 100. So this is going to cost $120. Now, you'll notice we're then asked to write or create an equation for the cost. So if the cost is Y, after working for X hours, let's just consider what we just did. We said it was going to be $20, and then it was going to be $25 for every hour that's worked. And every hour, we don't know how many hours, but we know that we're going to use X for the number of hours. Now, generally, we wouldn't write that time symbol, so I'll just move this over. We would write 20 plus 25X. Now, this is where our solve is going to come in, because if you have a look here, we've got find how many hours. So how many hours was X? So I'll just make a note, find X. If the gardener, find how many hours they worked if the cost was, so, or is, this is our cost here. Cost is Y, so we're given a Y value. Let's consider our rule. Y is 170, so I'm going to substitute Y is 170, so replace Y. And I need to know what value of X is going to give me 170 as the cost. So I might just delete these so they're out of the way. Menu 3.1, and I had 170, and that was equal to 20 plus 25X, and then I'm going to put comma X. And then we have it, 6 hours. And finally, last one, we see we're going to do exactly the same thing, but this time we've got this cost. So considering it's got 0.5 there, I'm thinking already we must probably have not a whole hour, maybe half of an hour with our answer here. Let's check. So 232.5. So menu 3.1, 232.5. You can put 0.50 if you want. It's not going to change it. 20 plus 25X, and then we'll go comma X. And what do we get? We get 8.5. So X equals 8.5 hours. There we go. So all done. Just a couple of things. Obviously, the worded ones are probably going to be the most challenging, so take your time with these. Perhaps if you are working on them, any worded ones today, perhaps work with someone else. Sometimes two minds are better than one. But when we are obviously practicing these sorts of skills that I've been doing, sort of thinking about how you would do one calculation, sometimes that can help you formulate an equation. The other thing is some students, when they're showing their workings, try and show this in their workings. I just wanted to let you know that that is not necessary. You do not need to write this bit down. You don't need to write solve and then a bracket because we know you're using your calculator. The only time you would show workings is if you were doing it by hand. If you're doing it by hand, you would show me exactly what you've done to both sides of the equation, as I did with those ones. So I'll stop there so that you can have a go, have it particularly with the calculator here, get some getting used to, but hopefully in no time you'll be remembering menu 3.1 for solving.